These days, probably half the country is ecstatic over the results from the midterm elections, and the other half is less than ecstatic from the results of the midterm elections. And so, if we were talking politics, I would know I had already lost half of you one way or the other. But the good news is, as today we talk with the winner of a recent election, everybody's happy. They've got to be happy because, especially if you're from the state of Michigan, to hear that John Lindert has been chosen as the 43rd PGA of America President is really pretty cool stuff. And John, thank you for coming on and chatting a little bit. First and foremost, congratulations.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's quite an honor. It's quite humbling, given the long, rich history that we've had here in the state of Michigan, and to be the third person from the state of Michigan in the 106-year history of the PGA of America to be elected as the president is quite humbling.
Well, it's quite a journey as well. And for people who aren't accustomed to the way all of it works, systematically speaking, within the PGA, could you kind of give us a little thumbnail walkthrough? Because it's not automatic, right? Just because you were secretary and vice president doesn't mean you eventually go automatically to president, right?
Well, the real contested election is for secretary. We've had one person run from vice president to president and not succeed in the history, but pretty much once you win the secretarial election, you kind of move up the chain. You go to vice president and then you go to president. I ran unopposed for vice president and I ran unopposed for president, but the secretary race was one that was a little bit more of a challenge. There were four of us that ran for secretary when I ran from across the country. And it's an election, kind of like a normal election. We have super regionals. We divide the country into four different quadrants, and we go and meet with four different parts of the PGA of America. The PGA of America is divided into 41 sections. So we'll meet with a quarter one day or 2 days, and then have a half day off, meet with a quarter the next 2 days in a week, and then take a couple of weeks off and redo that. When I ran, we went to Atlanta for a week, and then we went to Houston for a week with 3 weeks in between. And you do things like you meet with the 41 sections, you meet with what we call our districts. There are 14 districts that the 41 sections are divided into. And then we do an hour and a half debate. You do a 25-minute speech. So it's kind of the real deal. I'm not really a very political guy, but it was something that I thought I could stretch myself and challenge myself. And here I am 4 years later.
You didn't ever have to run the commercials like John Smith wants to steal your golf balls, and, kind of black and white of him and then full color of you getting along with senior citizens.
Yeah, no, I never had to do anything that said I support this message. Nope, never had to do anything like that.
No dealing with lobbyists. Well, at the same time as you're going through all of that, I would have to think that back home at the Country Club of Lansing, which is a wonderful, wonderful golf club, even though it's in the heart of Spartan country, I can say that as a Wolverine. It's an awesome place, but it doesn't require a sacrifice on the part of your home club when you have to commit all of the time that it takes to be an officer in the PGA.
Yeah, I mean, there's times away, and the challenging part would be the 1 week or 10-day trips, not so much the 1 and 2 day trips. And what I mean by that is, as an officer, you'll travel to the 41 sections from time to time. And normally that's a fly out on a Sunday night and you fly back on a Monday, and Monday is typically our day off anyhow. It's the 10-day trip to Augusta. It's the 10-day trip to the PGA Championship. It's the 10-day trip to the Ryder Cup. Depending upon what your tournament schedule is like at your host facility and where you're located, it can be a little bit of a challenge. For us, fortunately, the Masters is almost pre-season for us. The Ryder Cup is almost post-season for us. So the real challenge part would be that May, June time period. And when I decided to run, I went to our board here at the Country Club of Lansing, and I kind of laid out what my schedule was going to look like, and kind of gave them, this is what it looks like. This is the days I'll be gone. And we kind of built a program and a plan around that.
Well, wisely so, because I would think that by the time you start adding up all the different responsibilities, you'll be making a pretty frequent journey from wherever you're sitting now to Lansing Capital Airport or Metro Airport or wherever it is. Have you yet been able to get a full grasp of what these next couple of years are going to look like from a list of priorities standpoint, the different things that you'll have to tackle to address as president?
I think the only thing, the as an officer, you pretty much travel together. So you do a lot of those events as a group. The last 4 years I've gone to the Masters, well, with the exception of 2019 or 2020, excuse me. But I've gone to the Masters and I've gone to the Open Championships and been at the PGA I've gone to every PGA championship since 2007. So, I've done a lot of it. I've gone to the last 3 Ryder Cups. So a lot of that's been there. Your role is going to be greater. My time at those events will be eaten up differently, especially like at the PGA Championship. I know it's hard to say, but I probably won't get to see a lot of golf because my time will be eaten up with other things, meetings. It's a great time for industry people to get together because they're all coming for a great championship. And so it's time for me to meet with other people and talk to other people about the game of golf, get to follow golf a little bit on the golf course. So I've kind of ramped myself up to this, kind of have gotten used to it. The part that's going to be new is I'm part of the PGA Tour Policy Board, and they'll meet a few times or 5 or 6 times a year. Once again, with the advent of Zoom and remote, so much has become a little bit easier than having to get an airplane and travel. You can do it remotely. You can do it through Zoom if needed. We even tell our board members that on the PGA of America board, listen, we understand that you may have work requirements, and we provide a Zoom option. It's always better in person. I think you get so much more out of a conversation in person than in Zoom, and you get so much more with interaction when in person than through Zoom. But Zoom's an option, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned the PGA Tour Policy Board. I think that leads us into some discussion of just policy in general and where professional golf, amateur golf, and the game is these days. And I guess I would be committing some form of journalistic malpractice if I didn't start you off by asking about the PGA of America's relationship with LIV Golf and what you foresee happening as we wait for the major championships to declare how they're going to handle what has turned out to be a pretty thorny issue. Do you have any feel for that yet?
Yeah, I really don't. I mean, our policies of how people qualify to play in the PGA Championship are pretty much have been the same for a while. The commentary that we've made as a whole is we believe the current ecosystem is fantastic. It's worked really well. The PGA Tour provides a great feeder system for young individuals to work their way up to the PGA Tour. I have no idea where they're going to land. I have no idea where the USGA is going to land. I have no idea where Augusta National is going to land in the Masters. We have heard that the Open Championship said they're going to hold by traditions, although they weren't extremely specific about it. They just said they'd allow them to play. Now, whether that means they're going to allow them to qualify or whether that means they're going to acknowledge any exemptions, I haven't read the details to that, so I can't really speak to it. And for us, for the PGA of America, the PGA Championship is 6 months away, and as we learned, if anything, this whole world can change upside down in 6 months.
You are not kidding.
6 months or a month. So really, I can't even speculate as to what's going to happen because I really don't have a good feel for it until we get to 2023 and you start getting some sense of what the world's going to be like.
It's kind of funny, you look at the cycle or the season of golf, and if you live in a cold weather state like I do, like you do, that we have seasons. We have, the middle of April, we're praying for a melt and we want to get out on the green grass because we just watched the Masters and our golf fever is at a fever pitch. And then we get to this time of year and you and I happen to be speaking on a 75-degree Thursday in November somehow. And tomorrow the prediction is for snow. So
Right.
it's probably done. And during that concentrated time on the calendar, in cold weather, Midwestern states, we cram in as much golf as we can. I've talked to PGA professionals all over the state in just the last couple of weeks, and they are exhausted. They're grateful, they're thankful, but they're just wiped out. I mean, it's been nonstop. And so from the perspective of public play or member play, amateur golf, I think the game is as healthy as it perhaps has ever been. And yet we keep hearing these interpretations from the professional ranks about the turmoil in the game and growing and damaging and harming the game. Is it fair of me to say that golf is in two completely different hemispheres when we talk about the rest of us versus those who play it for a living?
Well, I think it all goes back to one's perspective, and you're right. There are kind of like two different, I would say, aspects to it. From for the 28,000 or nearly 28,000 PGA professionals across the country who I somewhat represent as their president, they've put in a long, hard season, or are about to, if they're in the southern part of the country, about to put in a long, hard season, trying to grow the game, trying to build the game, trying to support programs that the PGA of America helps support. We do the PGA Junior League. We're one of the supporters of Drive, Chip, and Putt with the USGA and Augusta National, and those two programs have introduced thousands upon thousands upon thousands of children into the game, and I'm a firm believer that they're going to keep them in the game. There's evidence to prove that through PGA Junior League, we've seen people, young boys and girls, transition from PGA Junior League to Korn Ferry Tour, to the LPGA Tour, to Division I college golf, to playing U.S. amateur golf. We had a young lady this past year who was 13 who made the cut in the U.S. Women's Amateur and actually won her first match. So we're building golfers for the future, and what that means to me and what that means to the nearly 28,000 is there's going to be more people playing golf for a longer period of time. These kids have now grown up with a sport that they weren't otherwise familiar with. We had 70,000 kids participate in PGA Junior League this past year. And as those kids get older, golf's going to be part of their fabric. They're going to continue to play as young adults. And what we'll see is, I believe this spurt that we've seen, this growth in the game that we've seen, primarily due to COVID's influence in early 2020, is going to continue for quite a few years, which means we're going to have to figure out a way to support that with the efforts of our nearly 28,000 PGA members. That's the plus side of it. I think with any sport, you see there's an amateur side and there's a professional side. Do they correlate all the time together? Not necessarily. There's a different aspect of that. I think from the professional side, the concern may be whether or not what the spectator base is going to be like, because the spectator base is growing as well. And there's so much great golf to watch. And I kind of liken it to, if you're watching, NFL football and one player goes down and another steps up. I think the same thing happens in professional golf. And I don't have to look very far backwards when I think about it. And I think about the Ryder Cup and Captain Stricker's captain's picks. And one of the picks that seemed to garner a lot more commentary than others was a young man by the name of Scotty Scheffler,
right,
who people didn't really think was a very good pick. And 6 months after that pick, he became world number one. So there is a future Tiger Woods, a future Rory McIlroy, a future Scotty Scheffler, a future Tom Kim that's out there waiting to make a name for themselves. And their game is extremely, extremely strong. We just don't know that individual. We just don't know what that face looks like, and we just don't know where that's coming from at this point in time. So I don't really think it's in a state of turmoil. I think it's just in a state of, we don't know where the future star is coming from. And sometimes that's a great thing. Isn't it great to turn on the TV and go, oh my gosh, look at that person. Wasn't Tom Kim a breath of fresh air at the President's Cup? I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, we love to meet or be exposed to new faces, new storylines, and rising stars. And I've started to, I guess the more that we've dealt with the LIV defections and we've had new players fill in the gaps that have been left open, I've realized a couple things. These are really, really good players as well. And in many cases, they come across as, and maybe this is unfair to those that have made the other choice to go to the other tour, but they come across as being much more thankful for the opportunity. They maybe haven't yet been spoiled or tarnished by whatever the level of pampering is that goes on. I enjoy gratitude. I enjoy thankfulness. So it's, at least in the short term, it's been kind of engaging for me to see these guys, the Tom Kims, come along and just kind of still be wide-eyed and in awe of their surroundings. And I don't know, there's something appealing about that to me.
Yeah, I will say this, the game of golf, I think has a unique aspect in the development of people in general. And just by nature that we're taught to play the game with honesty and integrity and sportsmanship, that's embedded in the game, that's embedded in the fabric of the game of golf, and it's in its history. We have so many historical videotapes of people calling penalty on themselves and giving putts at historic moments. Jack Nicklaus in the concession. And I kind of reflect back when I was in grade school, my grade school basketball coach taught me how to hold the gym short of the guy I was standing next to. When they jumped up to get a rebound, I would have a hold of their gym short. So we were taught how to create penalties when we were kids playing other sports, but golf creates a different fabric. It creates a different aspect. It's honesty, it's integrity, it's sportsmanship, it's gratitude, it's taking your hat off, shaking hands. I think that you see that throughout the game. I look at some of the players that are really, really good players that people are just starting to see. Sahith Thegali was a great collegiate player. And all of a sudden, it's like that movie star or actress who is all of a sudden a superstar. But when you go back and look at their history, they're grounded in that they've spent years and years and years honing their craft. Sahith is one of these young men that it was a standout at Pepperdine, and now he's on tour and he's actually playing to his capability, much like Max Homa. Max Homa was a great collegiate player.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he's finding his own on the PGA Tour. It's not an overnight sensation by any stretch of the imagination, but there are so many of those examples. And whether it's on the PGA Tour, the Korn Ferry Tour, the LPGA Tour, it's endless that those individuals exist. And going back to the game of golf, how it influences them, I think there are more really, really good, solid individuals than there are not solid individuals.
You used a few key words a moment ago: integrity, honesty, sportsmanship. And for those who are seeing our conversation, they know that you're sitting in an office where over your right shoulder, I see a picture of Mr. Palmer. I see a picture of you with Mr. Palmer and what looks to be one of his gloves. So there's got to be a story. Speaking of the iconic poster child for sportsmanship, honesty, and integrity, how did you meet the king?
I caddied for him.
Oh, wow.
So it was a very unique situation. I was a young man trying to play a little bit. I worked at PGA National in West Palm Beach in the bag room early in the morning so I could spend my afternoons practicing, playing, and competing. And he was doing the grand opening of what was then called the General Golf Course at PGA National. They had a select, and it was an actual drawing of a straw, and I drew the long straw. I got to caddy for Mr. Palmer. We went out, and by caddy, I use that word very, very loosely. His golf bag was on a golf cart. I was just walking with him down the fairway, talking to him. We went out on a very windy afternoon at the General Golf Course, and the exhibition went from an 18-hole exhibition to a 9-hole exhibition. But we were coming down 18, and I can remember this story distinctly. He hit a nice drive, and he had his old black painted persimmon head with the black wrapped Newman leather grip steel shaft. He hit driver off the deck for his second shot, and he still had a 2-iron in, and he hit this beautiful bullet 2-iron with a little draw. It overdrew and it went into the pond. And he asked me for another golf ball, and I tossed him another golf ball, hit the same ball flight, the same pattern, went in the same spot in the pond. And he goes, "I'm done." And I looked at him and I said, "You've got one more ball in this sleeve." So I tossed it at him and he knocked that one on the green. And we got done and he asked me, he said, are you clocked in? I said, no. He said, you want to go have a beer? I said, I was of age, I was legal. And I said, sure, why not? So we went into the men's grill and at PGA National at that point and had a couple beers and just sat and talked. And that's kind of the man he was. He would give up his time to anybody that wanted it, and he'd extend and offer kindness to anybody that wanted it. And interestingly enough, fast forward about 3 years later, I had my first child, and I was at the PGA Merchandise Show, and he recognized me and stopped and said hello, and could he hold my son and hold my daughter? And it was the man was really remarkable.
Wow. Do you remember what you talked about in the men's grill?
We just talked about golf. We talked about aspirations. We talked about a little bit about his history, a little bit about the golf course itself. He was up for almost anything, and he was up for almost any conversation. And it was, I actually told him, because I had already had the golf glove. And it was an interesting story about the golf glove. My mother was watching, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my mother was watching a PBS, the Public Broadcasting Network fundraiser. And she did needlepoint and was half paying attention, and she heard the Arnold Palmer Golf Club. And so she bid $50 on it, and it was golf glove. And obviously she bid right away. And this was a long, long time ago. And she bid $50 and nobody outbid her. And she went down to the Channel 10 network to pick up the club and found out that it was a glove. And so then some negotiating ensued, and Mom didn't pay 50, but she paid more than the next highest bidder. I know that. So I talked about that story as well. And then he sent me an autographed picture of that. There's a picture of he and I standing by the golf bag. He sent me that autographed picture, which was great.
That is such a cool memory. I mean, you have a chance to rub shoulders with, just one of the greats of all time. And I'm guessing that while you were talking about future and golf and you probably said to him at the age of whatever, 19 or 20, someday I'm going to be the PGA of America president, Palmer. And he just called your shot right then.
No, that was not even on my radar. I was trying to be the next journeyman tour player, and that didn't happen. But we had a great conversation, and obviously he loves the game of golf, and talk about honesty and integrity and sportsmanship, the whole 9 yards. He embodied all those qualities, and he taught so many behind him how to act. And even to the day that, he continued mentoring, if you will, PGA Tour players and even non-PGA Tour players. He mentored a lot of people. He mentored a lot of people that he actually met, and he probably mentored a lot of people that he never met.
Yeah, that's really a good way to put it. When we look at how the game has changed since those days, even of your time of a 9-hole caddying round for Arnold, we fast forward to today. I think probably most often the topic of conversation is how far the ball flies. And for the professionals, it flies forever. For the rest of us, it does not. The PGA of America certainly will have a voice in determining what happens, if anything, when it comes to equipment and the ball being rolled back or club spring-like effect or something, because it's all always thrown into the mix, right? There's the common set of ingredients that get brought up in all the conversations about where the game is headed from a distance standpoint. I've said many times, I wish I hit it too far. I wish people would be aghast at how far the ball goes off my club face, and that's not the case. Where's the PGA of America headed with the ball, the distance issue, and all of those parts of the game that seem to be forever unsolved?
That's a great question. I think that, when you start and look at it, and you look at the data that's being provided, it's really clear that the only people that hit it too far are that very, very small handful of maybe less than 0.1%. And I'm not even looping in 100% of the PGA Tour players, because 100% of them don't hit it all that, they're not the bombers. There's a small percentage of the tour players that are bombers. And the LPGA, there are even a smaller percentage of those players that are bombers. But, I think from our perspective, the game's in a really, really good place. Can people hit it far on the tour? Yes. Has it dramatically changed the results of the scoring? No. I think that the numbers show it. The tour scoring averages have not dropped from 72 to 58. We're still seeing the scores for the Varden Trophy from 69 to 68. So it's a shot here, shot there. The other thing I think people don't take into account is the regimen that these players are on, the care and diligence that they give their body far exceeds where we were 20 years ago. These players are fully dedicated. They get up 3 hours early, they go to the gym, they get stretched, they warm up, they come back, they get stretched again, they play, they get stretched again, they go back, they hit the gym again. This isn't the day and age of weights being a bad thing. These players work really hard at taking care of their bodies. And with that, they're going to hit it farther. So does equipment make a little bit of a difference? Yes. Would rolling back the ball make a change to some players? Probably a little. Is that best interest of the game itself? For the people that I see, they don't hit it too far. They may hit it, as I said before, they may hit it too far left and too far right, but they certainly don't hit it too far straight. And the game is in a great place. I would hate to deter people from playing and have a bad taste in their mouth from playing. So the PGA of America, I think, is stand firmly, and we believe that we should be protecting the game for the 99.9% as opposed to the 0.1% that's out there that may hit it a little bit too far.
Yeah, we're 2 months and a couple of weeks away from the PGA show. Are you anticipating a full bounce back of that annual gathering? It's been a couple of lean years with COVID and everybody trying to figure out what the rules were going to be and if anybody was going to attend. What are you hearing about the 23 version?
So the 22 version for a setback, I think 22 was, for me, because I've been going for a lot of years, was really reflective of the early years where you didn't have as many tire kickers. You had a lot of buyers. You had a lot of people utilizing the time to make good, sound business decisions, to meet new vendors that they could bring into their respective facilities. 2022, I thought was very reflective of that, which I thought was very positive. Now, we had some big manufacturers that decided not to attend. 2023, we're getting those big manufacturers back. And obviously travel is a little bit easier. There's a huge component, I shouldn't say huge, but there is a percentage of individuals that came to the PGA show that weren't from the United States. Travel into the States a year ago was a little bit more challenging, and maybe not so much travel into the States, but travel from the States back to where they came from was extremely challenging. So with those restrictions lessened to a large degree, I think you're going to see more of an international flair, more international people coming over to utilize the show, which was a percentage of the people that would always show up. So I look for this show to be more resembling one pre-COVID. But I think that people have figured out how to stop kicking tires and how to go there to buy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. Let's not get greedy here. Let's go 65-degree, 10-mile-an-hour breeze demo day. Not take that. Just dry, sunny, a little bit of breeze is fine. And by that time in late January, we'll be ready for that.
I think if my memory is not extremely solid, but I seem to remember maybe 2 out of the last 4, I don't think would have qualified for any of that. It might have been 50 degrees, rain sideways, and 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yes, it was miserable. Absolutely.
Welcome to a Chamber of Commerce day in Orlando.
Absolutely miserable. I've got 2 questions left for you, and I sure appreciate you taking the time to do all of this. And by the way, let me just tell everybody, John and I had this conversation about 3 days ago. We had it 3 days ago, and as soon as we got off of our call, the audio file that I started to play back was completely corrupted. It was a technical glitch. It was completely on this end somehow. I don't know. I tried to replicate it, couldn't make it happen again. And thankfully, we were able to connect again, and I do appreciate you doing that. And while it's a slightly different conversation, I'm sure you've hammered out a number of the similar questions in these last several days. So thank you right up front. And when you get to this point of leadership in a national organization as important as the PGA of America, there's a lot, I would have to think there's a lot of people in your life who have been a part of the journey that you think about at that moment of inauguration, when the handshakes are all around, and those people may not be standing there with you, but they're part of who you are. And I just wonder if you wanted to take a moment and sing out their names and praise them a little bit.
Sure. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, my wife, Wendy, she was there for me during the campaign. Well, she's been there for me our entire marriage, first and foremost, but she's the one that had to deal with me when I was a sourpuss, when somebody would call up and say, you're supporting a different candidate, and she'd have to prop me up and tell me we're going down the right path. And she'd be the one to kind of keep me in check and keep me in line and keep my spirits up. And she's very faithful, and she just believed that this was going to happen. So she's first and foremost, and she's still there. The first 4 years as an officer, we talk. I mean, there's some things I can't share with her, but we talk about things, and she really wants us to continue our life as being who we are. Yes, we're in a volunteer position, but in 2 years, I'll be the first person that nobody wants to hear from. So she does a great job of keeping my head squarely in the center of my shoulders and making sure that I don't get way too far above of who I am and who we are. And then I had a campaign team, Trey Van Dyke from Chicago and Darren Hoff, who used to be from Michigan, but is from Orlando. And then Ron Osborne, who's at Binder Park in Battle Creek. And those three gentlemen through the campaign process helped me immensely. And none of this really, would have happened without the support from the club and my staff here at the club. I've got three extremely strong individuals that work for me in Logan Simmons and Tiffany Simons and Kevin Corbett. They actually were able to come down for the election, and they've been there through the entire process. And so when I'm gone, they have to cover for me, and all that. It's a team effort. And as I said when I ran, and I also said when I got elected, I'm that proverbial turtle on a fence post. Not quite sure how I got here, but I know I didn't get here by myself. And those are just a few of the people. I could go on and on and on. The Michigan Section PGA that gave me the confidence to do this, and their support, and Kevin Helm, who's their executive director. But and my family, my daughter Brooke and her husband Bryce, and our two grandchildren Oliver and Riley, and then I have a son JD and his wife Katie, who have been tremendously supportive. Because when it's all said and done, there's time that you sacrifice, and typically that time you sacrifice is from your family. And so you need their support, and without that support, none of this really goes very far.
Yeah, according to our internal Michigan Golf Live FORE Golfers Network investigation, is it true that whenever you enter into the clubhouse at CCL that they now play Hail to the Chief?
Boy, if that's the case, then my ears are going bad, because I haven't heard that. All I hear when I walk into the clubhouse is the vacuum cleaner going.
Last question for you. As I mentioned several moments ago, it's near the end of the season for the cold weather golf states, and an exhausted body of PGA professionals all over the country. What do you want them to hear from their president as you lead them into the next couple of years?
Well, I think first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for accepting the challenge. Thank you for making this a passion. One of the things I said at the annual meeting when I got elected is, we're up against a recruitment and retention issue, and as a lot of industries are. But I really truly believe if you find something you're passionate about, the recruitment aspect becomes a lot easier. If somebody would have put me in a different position throughout my career and given me a different work opportunity, whether it was folding shirts or flipping burgers, I may not be where I am today, but I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to experience something I was passionate about, and that was instructing the game and playing the game. And so I'm extremely grateful for all those individuals that are out there and have the passion to stay in this industry, and the passion to teach the next generation of golfer, and the passion to service the golfers that are out there today, because without them, the game isn't where it is today. So I know thank you seems like it's an underwhelming phrase and or words, but it's factual. They deserve a ton of thanks for going in every day. And people don't realize that as a golf professional in a lot of different states, golf was deemed to be the one sport that was safe to do during COVID. And while so many people worked remotely, and worked remotely meant going to the golf course, that meant that the PGA professional went to work trying to administer policies and procedures that were put in place by the government, and rightly so. But it went from handshaking to wearing gloves and wearing masks and disinfecting golf carts and disinfecting golf clubs and not being able to touch grips and not be able to touch bags. And that's a stressful moment in time for a lot of people, to not only have to be the front line, so to speak, not in a healthcare position, but in dealing with people where everybody else was at home, and then to work long hours because the game was starting to grow and gain some favor. That gratitude needs to be expressed.
Yeah, that's well said. And a good note on which to close. John, thank you. I know these are incredibly busy times, so thank you for doing this round two. I promise there won't be a round three. We're recording in triplicate. All the gremlins have been eradicated from the technology, and I'll look forward to just seeing you in person. I'm guessing probably at the PGA show will be the first time that we're in the same place, and look forward to shaking your hand and properly saluting you, Mr. President. So Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bill, I appreciate it. And I did mean, call me anytime. I just wasn't expecting it 48 hours later. So.
Yes, I take these things very literally. So thanks, John.
Thank you. Have a great day.